cool. Covers both the City of Adelaide and North Adelaide as well. So two areas where there's a lot of public interaction, whereby you've got people from surrounding suburbs, surrounding council areas using that space. So far more considerations in terms of any development interaction with that public space. I won't go into the specific zoning for this property. I'll leave that up to you guys to get that, to work your way through that, see if there's anything in there that's really pertinent to our building. You should be well versed with that process. Now, I will, however, have a quick look at this. So, our table of contents for the development plan. So covering our council-wide objectives, getting a bit of a feel for, what do we have to be looking for when we're working within the city for this particular project. First one, in working through this, okay, city living, housing choice. Well, we're not providing housing, we're not providing student accommodation, although that would be an interesting exercise, I think, for you guys to do in a subject like this. However, got to do the commercial project. But there's a lot of student accommodation happening in the city at the moment. That's a big thing, and I think it's a fantastic thing. It brings a lot of vibrancy back into the city and a much higher population density. Land division, we're not dividing any land, we're not cutting anything off, and in the main there's not a great deal of that going on in the city unless it's former larger sites, car parking, warehousing, etc., which is getting divided up into higher end residential or student accommodation. Low scale residential, certainly not low scale residential, medium to high scale residential service apartment, we're not one of those either. So moving on, looking at environmental, crime prevention through urban design. I think that's something which is going to be pertinent to our project. So first up, rather than jump straight to those, I might just highlight some of these sections. So grab that, and then it's not comment. Maybe we've got crime prevention through urban design, operating hours and associated activities of licensed premises. Not really an issue for us. Look, you may want to. Look, I'll steer you away from that. We're not doing a licensed premise at the base of this property. Noise emissions, there might be something in that for us, but in the main, probably not. Certainly we'll have some services. There's judicial placement of those services, thinking about where they can be, both in terms of aesthetics and noise, but not a great issue for us. Waste management, once again, we're not producing anything on site. Waste management is not going to be a particular issue for us beyond the normal activities of office buildings within the city. Contaminated sites, possibly, but also highly unlikely. It's the development on the former Ayres, or on the current Ayres house site. It's never been used for industry. There are certainly sites around that area that are contaminated. So the whole back section behind the Royal Adelaide Hospital, it was actually quite a while ago, before they did the Botanic High School there, when they did the gardens there, a friend was working on the landscaping for that. They had to remove the top 400 mil of soil for that. So they had to remove a lot of soil for that site. That site's been all remediated, but there are sites within the city that certainly do. That is a major constraint, but we won't identify that as a constraint for us, and it's highly unlikely. Energy efficiency, important for all projects. So there's going to be energy efficiency considerations. We're going to want to have a look at that, and possibly renewable energy in concert with that. Microclimate and sunlight, certainly a consideration for our property. It's a consideration for any large development. Once you start going over 2 stories, over a single story, you start having an impact on the shading and the wind of areas. That's one thing. Possibly you guys have noticed that in the city, the wind tunneling that happens in the city. You might have a relatively light southwesterly hitting the city, but then that gets concentrated into certain alleys and decent winds pouring through. Those winds also have effects on different buildings around them as well, and this is one of the things that Adelaide City Council have to manage. We're not going very high with our building. We're going 3 stories high. You may also notice in working through the development plan, we've actually got maximum heights for those buildings. Because we have aircraft flying over, so flying over both the city and particularly over North Adelaide. There's a lot of aircraft coming over North Adelaide, and it's a hill that stands up, and so significant constraints there. We still have some of those constraints in the Adelaide City. One of the things it says in the development plan is you are to build to a certain percentage of the minimum height. I'll leave that up for you guys to explore and have a look at. But that's certainly a thing to be looking at. Stormwater management. Well, that's going to be not so much an issue, but a consideration for all developments happening on sites. Ways in which we can manage stormwater. Well, it's about ensuring that we don't add to pollutants and debris, dissolved things, etc., going into our waterways. Some of that debris that can include leaves. Certainly, we don't want to have topsoil, etc., washed into waterways, and so there's going to have to be temporary controls during the construction phase for ensuring that we don't have water runoff to stormwater, and that's going to be the same with every project. But going on from there, how do we deal with our stormwater from on site? So stormwater it's a big thing for councils to be dealing with, more so in a residential sense, but within the Adelaide City we do have a lot of paved areas, so very little greenery, a lot of paved areas, a lot of runoff from that. So from your does anybody know what millimetres of rainfall we get in the Adelaide City per annum? Not much? I would have thought it's around the 600s or so. 600 mil per annum.
I think it's a bit lower than that.
Bit lower than that.
Yeah.
Because that just at the face of the hills, we get around 700 mil per annum where we are. But that's because the clouds hit the hills and do a big jump. But yeah, so okay, at 500 mils off a 100 square metre roof, that's 50,000 litres of water per annum landing on that 100 square metres. If we've got 300 square metre roof, we're at 150,000 litres per annum falling off that roof. If we expand that area, paved area, to 1 hectare, so 10,000 square metres, well, I'm not going to do the sums on that, but there are large volumes of water coming off those sites. We have in Adelaide City, not sure exactly how many millimetres per hour, but we're at that. I think it's 124 millimetres maximum rainfall per hour that can possibly happen here. So it's a moderate rainfall intensity, but at times there's huge volumes of water to be dealt with. And you would have noticed that when we have these really wet days that our stormwater systems don't. Well, they cope quite well. They do very well, but you still get flooding on roads. You still get disruption of traffic and things like that. Council's obviously very keen to minimise those things. What they've brought in places like Mitcham and Tea Tree Gully are detention and retention tanks, so that your stormwater from your house goes into a tank and then slowly seeps out. Adelaide City Council are not imposing that on any of their developments. As you could imagine, there's not really the space for imposing detention schemes, but there are detention schemes that can happen within ground, and there are diversion practices for getting stormwater from a site, getting that into the ground. That can help with the greenery of your site as well, help the trees to grow, particularly when you've got paved areas. You don't get that soakage through from the top. So if you can provide access, or diversion of stormwaters into the ground, thus minimising runoff from your site, that's certainly something that would be very, very beneficial for council. So stormwater management infrastructure. So infrastructure might be important to us. We've got to be aware of what's around us there. Following on from that, working through heritage conservation. Well, technically yes, okay, but we're not dealing with that with this project. Obviously, we're knocking down Ayers House. There would be, in the real world, there'd be some major constraints around heritage and conservation, and we'll be discussing there'd be many people that have a stake in that. And then heritage and conservation, North Adelaide. So obviously we're not in North Adelaide, but certainly the reason North Adelaide gets a specific mention is because there is a lot of historic development within North Adelaide. Just the bulk of what you see in North Adelaide comes under either local or state heritage listing. Beyond that, built form and townscape, height, bulk and scale. It's got to be a consideration for us. Now we've been given a project. We have, this has been developed. The client has tried to get it through council before and has not been successful. They're wanting you to do this. So basically, you're currently prescribed. This is your building. This is your thing that you've got to try to get through. We don't have much in the way of modification we can do about this, but it's certainly good for us to know that. So what does the council want in that regard? Plot ratio, same sort of thing. We've got a building, we've got a site. We don't really have much control over that. Our client wants us to achieve that, but it's good for us to know what the council wants. Maximum dwelling density and floor space, not an issue for us. That relates to dwellings, so for residential. Landscape open space, there may be some considerations in there for us. Building setbacks. So as Sarah mentioned before, not a great deal in terms of prescriptive building setbacks. It doesn't say you have to do this and this and this. It's far more conceptual. Composition and proportion. There may be some aspects in that for us, articulation and modelling. Materials, colours and finishes. That's going to be your biggest variable, the thing that you guys have to play with that can make a big difference to our project. That's something that the client hasn't stipulated. So you can be working through that, get the creative ideas flowing, think how can we achieve this by the cloaking that we're providing to our building. Corner sites, so we're not a corner site, so we get away from that one. Sky and roof lines, there's going to be some consideration for us in that. Active street frontages. The test? Yeah. Within that location where we are with the redevelopment of the old Royal Adelaide Hospital across the road, our connection with Paxton Walk and Vaughan Place, tram stop right in front of the building, there is going to be quite a bit of activity around that site, and so yes, there will be significant interaction from our front space of that building and the public sphere. So outdoor dining, that's going to be primarily consideration for residential development, but it may be something that you want to incorporate into your designs, thinking about how can you provide some space for employees so they're not eating lunch at their desk, but actually out enjoying our sort of Mediterranean climate. Demolition, we're treating this project as though we're post demolition. So we've been through that stage of demolishing Ayres House. We have a flat site, blank canvas, so to speak. So no demolition constraints for you in this project. Vacant sites and buildings. Well, essentially, yes, we are currently a vacant site, but we're putting in an application to council to get that changed. Landscaping, certainly there are going to be a lot of constraints and considerations around landscaping. That's going to be a very important one for our project. That's another area, like the building facade, that you've got a bit of control over, that you can have some creative input and go, this is what we can do to dress up the whole project and create a beautiful building or a beautiful development. Advertising, well, we're probably not going to be in control or contributing to any of that. That's not so much our bag with this project. Squares and public spaces. In the main, we're probably wanting to limit the actual public use of our site. Certainly, we need to have that delineation between our space and theirs. So we can't have a visual delineation. In fact, it should be open visually. It should feel, in a visual sense, to be part of the public space, but we don't necessarily want to be inviting people to be kicking the footy and hanging out on the lawns. Transport and access. So that's an important one for us. That's a major consideration in our development. Access and movement. We've got to provide access to our site. We're coming in, coming off. Do we want to promote alternative forms of transport? When I say alternative, that assumes the car is the norm. Do we want to be promoting that? We've got a tram stop right at the front. That tram is connected to parking stations at Hindmarsh, parking areas down south, Peacock Terrace, etc., around the South Parklands. There's the capacity for people, and there's the connectivity with the tram from Glenelg as well. There's that capacity for people to drive in from the outer urban areas, park in these locations, and jump on the tram. The tram from South Terrace, etc., it's free from there, so it's quite a good transport option, and a way of shifting our car parking requirements out to those outer areas. So we can certainly exploit that. Pedestrian access. So we have to think about the pedestrian access for our site, but also for that interaction with Vaughan Place as well. Bicycle access. Has anybody here ridden a bicycle into the city on a regular basis or so? So I used to live right. Well, I used to live right in the city, very short walk from this thing, but also later on lived fairly close, just outside of the city. Took my bike pretty much everywhere. The main sort of bicycle freeway is the Torrens Linear Park. There's that option for you to, even if you're in the northeastern suburbs or so, or anywhere down along that Torrens area to Henley Beach or not far from there, it's very easy to link up with that path and then head to places. So like we have South Road and the freeways coming into the city. That linear path along the Torrens is very much a sort of bicycle freeway. We're not actually very far from that in terms of connection. So straight down Frome Road, past Adelaide Uni to where the zoo is. That's that bicycle transport freeway. There's also and does anybody know the former mayor of Adelaide, or met Stephen Yarwood? Heard of him before? So he was the mayor before our current mayor. I can't think of the name of our current mayor. He's not so outspoken and proactive. He's not super public. But Stephen Yarwood, mayor prior to him, was very much out there doing a lot of talks and a lot of consultation and discussion with people. one of his big things was electric bicycles. So he saw that electric bicycles are going to be far more prominent within our urban area, and we need to plan for that. And they do make a lot of sense. You can get a lot of range out of electric bicycles now without requiring a license for them. Also, we've seen has everybody seen those Lime scooters
Oh, yes.
about the place? So it's yeah, so it's
So you can hire it. Sometimes I just see the scooters just outside the hotel or outside the store.
in the torrents. Yeah.
In the scooter, is that right?
No, I think it's a phone app. I haven't used them.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've only been in the city a couple of times since they were sort of brought in. But I think you put an app on your phone and you walk up to it and go, beep, and I'll use you for a bit, and then it charges you some money for doing that. And then if you go outside a certain radius or something like that, it goes, okay, you're not allowed to go any further. You have to stop here. Yeah, but yes, and before that they had the yellow bicycles as well, so the free bicycles. So, but the Lime scooters, they're an electrified form of transport and highly popular. A lot of people getting around on them. So those forms of transport, I think, are going to be really prominent in our city, and we do need to think about those and think about those interactions. Unfortunately, for this project, we can't, and I'm not advocating for you to contest the parking requirements on site. That's it. In real life, I think that would be a fantastic thing to do, to approach the council and say, well, look, we've got these other forms of transport taking over. Do I really need to provide this degree of car parking on my site? Tram stop right here. Can I have some concessions there? We can't do that with this project, but I think certainly for the future, that's a very important consideration. But yeah, so great access to our site for alternative forms of transport, either cycle or tram or foot. So yeah, public transport, we've sort of covered that in that last statement. Traffic and vehicle access. Has anybody driven down North Terrace at 8:30 in the morning? Yeah, you might as well. It's a car park. And it's even quite busy at the best of times. That corner coming around there is incredibly busy. We want a lot of visibility, entering and exiting the site. Yes, there are minimum requirements about how wide your entry exit needs to be. Maybe you want to make it a little bit wider, a little bit easier to navigate than the base requirements for that, simply because it's not easy getting in and out of that site. And certainly now that there's that widened island to accommodate for the tram in the middle of the road, I think it's going to be a very squeezy spot. Okay, and car park. So
that means that mean it'd be left turn exit only?
Yes, definitely left turn exit only. Yeah. So and your only entry is going to be left turn entry as well. That's all that we have for this site. So it's still a dual entry exit, but there's that tram stop cuts that road in half at that point with a fence down that for a fair way. Economic growth and land use. Well, okay, that's getting sort of broader concept. It's important for you to know and to have a good look at. We are given, as I said before, we're given a project, we're given a site. That's what we've got to try to get through. We're not in the position of going, well, let's maximise our footprint, let's maximise our accommodation, our height, build for the future. We don't really have that as an option for us. But that's what you'll see expressed in there. That's what the Adelaide City Council want, is not just buildings for today, but buildings for the future. Centres and main streets, we're not so much we're a central policy area, but we're not specifically a centre in a main street. Very close to one, Rundle Street, one of those major centres. Telecommunication facilities, easy enough. Parklands, we're not per se within the parklands, but we are within that parklands district. There's a lot of connectivity with us and the parklands and so what's happening in the parklands is going to be important determinant for our site. Then down the bottom here, regulated trees and significant trees. Yeah, we're going to have to be understanding our regulated trees and significant trees. So, popping back. Popping back up. So I think actually no, it's going to be a lot more than 20 minutes. So I think that revisit that statement. Okay. So 38. So crime prevention through urban design. So a safe and secure crime-resistant environment that ensures that land uses are integrated and designed to facilitate natural surveillance. So yeah, I think as I mentioned last week, we don't want big bushes that go right down to the ground that people can hide in, nefarious activities can take place. Promote building and site security and promotes visibility through the incorporation of clear lines of sight and appropriate lighting. So if you didn't get it first time round, it's spelled out again. Development should promote safety and security of the community in the public realm, and within the development should promote natural surveillance of the public realm, including open space, car parks, pedestrian routes, service lanes, public transport stops, and residential areas. Well, we've got all of those except for the last one. So there's a lot in that for us. Through the design and location of physical features, electrical and mechanical devices, activities, and people to maximise visibility by orientating windows, doors, and building entrances towards the street, open spaces, car parks, pedestrian routes, and public transport stops. So that's telling us where we need to have our front door, but also in this, electrical and mechanical devices. Possibly you want to be having some sensors and lights and things and lighting happening in that space for night time and specifying that as part of your landscaping plan, and that can add a lot of visual interest to your landscaping and even enhance that at night time with underlighting of trees and things like that. You can create some really, really beautiful spaces doing that. Avoiding high walls, blank facades, carports and landscaping that obscures direct views to public areas. So this is talking about provision of security, but you'll see this sort of theme continued on throughout. Avoiding high walls, blank facades. So you'll be told that once here, and you'll be told that again throughout. Arranging living areas, windows, pedestrian paths, and balconies to overlook recreation areas, entrances, and car parks. Once again, we're not changing our building, but it's important to understand. Okay, well our building is providing this. That may be something the council are happy about. We want to get as many of those ticks on the list as we can, so to speak. Positioning recreational and public space areas so they are bound by roads on at least 2 frontages or overlooked by development. Creating a complementary mix of day and nighttime activities such as residential, commercial, recreation and community uses that extend the duration and level of intensity of public activity. So there might be something in your specification of what you want to be doing with that lower story. Thinking, okay, well, do we just have to operate during the daytime hours? Can we take advantage of our location there, connected right with Rundle Street and tram stop out the front? Council want that to happen. Locating public toilets, telephones, and other public facilities with direct access and good visibility from well-trafficked public spaces. We do have to provide some toilets that are for public use. We are our building is of a not so much of a public nature, but of a retail nature where people from the public come in. But this is more so in the provision of public toilet realm. Ensuring that rear service areas and access lanes are either secured or exposed to surveillance, and ensuring the surveillance of isolated locations through the use of audio monitors emergency telephones or alarms, video cameras or staff by surveillance of lift and toilet areas within car parks. So we're not going to have that. We have offices on the second floor and on the third floor. We're not going to have those tenanted at night in the main. So we're going to have to provide that surveillance, that lighting, that natural surveillance through other means. Provide access control by facilitating communication, escape and pathfinding within development through legible designs by incorporating clear directional devices, so some signage or so, or landscaping cards that give people the sense of this is where you need to go, this is how you'll travel, this is how you'll get there. Yeah, avoiding opportunities for concealment near well-travelled routes. So landscaping once again. I can't. The term slips my mind right now. I can't think of what it's called. Where you've got urban planners, landscape architects, designers who are doing these public spaces. They put in a path here. They say this is the path you need to take, and then you so often see this little worn path heading off to exactly where people. Has anybody ever noticed that before? There's a classic one in North Adelaide, right by the Women's and Children's Hospital. There's a park there, and the footpath goes down around. Everybody's heading to the street crossing at Melbourne Street from there, and there's just this path across. I sort of I love those things, like you see them about, but they also do represent a bit of a failure at the planning stage of, what are we actually providing here if people are carving their own, own paths of travel. So yeah, I think be conscious of that. Where do people need to go, and to what extent can you direct them? At what extent are they going to go, yeah, nah, and head off in their own, forge their own path and create one? Does anybody know the term for that? There is a name. There is a name for it. Yeah, I think it's like a Facebook group or something that shows. Anyhow. Yeah, but everybody knows everybody's seen those little paths carved before. So avoiding opportunities for concealment near well-travelled routes, closing off or locking areas during off-peak hours such as stairwells to concentrate access exit points to a particular route. Also, certainly our building by its makeup will do that. Use of devices such as stainless steel mirrors where a passage has a bend. Probably don't have to be dealing with any of those things. Locating main entrances and exits at the front of the site and in view of the street, most certainly. Providing open space and pedestrian routes which are clearly defined and have a clear and direct sight lines for the users, and locating elevators and stairwells where they can be viewed by a maximum number of people near the edge of buildings where there's a glass wall at the entrance. So we have that glass wall at the entrance. This is a good one. Promote territoriality or sense of ownership through physical features that express ownership and control over the environment and provide a clear delineation of public and private space. I think if there's a candidate for having to do that within development, our development is probably that. By clear delineation of boundaries marking public, private, semi-private space, such as by paving, lighting, walls, and planting. So that's us. Dividing large development sites into territorial zones to create a sense of ownership of common space by smaller groups. So smaller groups of dwellings. So this is more from this is being written from a residential perspective, but we have guidance in here, and I think good guidance for us in our development for doing that as well. We have to think about, okay, what is the site being used for? So yes, we have car parking, we have emergency services, access and hydrants and things like that. There is infrastructure. Then there is public access, and there is also use, or hopefully there's going to be use by people who are using the building there. Where do they go at lunchtime? Well, there's plenty of cafes and places to eat and everything, outside of that. For people who are bringing their lunch, where are they going to go? Are they going to have fantastic areas to sit. So you can create those sort of tiered uses in your site by your landscaping. Look, where are we? Planting shrubs that have a mature height less than 1 metre and trees with a canopy that begins at 2 metres. Oh, sorry. So provide awareness through design, blah blah blah, by planting shrubs. So that's a bit of guidance there for your shrubs. So if we go on to that Botanical Gardens plant selector, we've got some things we can put in there. Mature height less than 1 metre. So what sort of shrubs do we have for that? Where do we want to put them, etc. And with the canopy that begins at 2 metres. So we've got some constraints to think about that there. And also you've got some, as you would have seen when you get that site plan, you've got some existing vegetation there. You can have a look at those types of trees and go, okay, honey locust, what is it? What does it look like? Does it fit the bill? Do we need to take them out? Adequate and consistent lighting of open spaces, building entrances, parking and pedestrian areas to avoid creation of shadowed areas. For sure, use of robust and durable design features to discourage vandalism. So probably many of you would have noticed that typically trees don't get vandalised so much. Fences get vandalised, electricity substations get vandalised, large areas of windows get vandalised, but typically a lot of your landscaping, site features, things like that are susceptible to that. Then
Depends on your surfaces as well.
Yeah, and whether those surfaces can be easily cleaned. If you know, if a surface, you know, somebody goes and paints it or uses paint texture or something like that, or scratching vandalism is much harder to deal with. You can buff out in certain things, but so those anti-graffiti surfaces. If somebody tags something and it's gone the next day, tag again, gone the next day, that's a big disincentive for, you know. They no longer have that public billboard. I guess that's what you were alluding to.
I was just more saying that the fact that we've got a brick wall in front, you know, in front of the property, but it's made out of stone, and it's a lot harder to tag than it is to tag, say, a metal.
Oh yes.
Just something that's been painted.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to tag because it's already been surfaced, ready for paint.
Yeah.
So a lot of your smoother surfaces will get tagged a lot easier.
Yeah.
Whereas you go for something rough, paint with a stick.
Oh yeah.
As well, which makes it easy to clean off.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. No, it's great having people with certain skills and aptitudes in there. Alright, we go 45. So, energy efficiency. Although actually, no, we're not having to deal with contaminated sites. I say we just move on from that one. Energy efficiency. Development which is compatible with long-term sustainability of the environment, minimises consumption of non-renewable resources and utilises alternative energy generation systems. So, any ideas of what alternative energy generation systems we could use on that site? Incorporate.
Solar.
Yeah. Solar, wind, possibly. So you've got central markets. You've got your wind turbines up there. Those helical turbines that sit vertically.
So the wind turbines need to combine with the battery if you want to use the wind turbines.
No, you can get the inverters now that will directly into the grid.
Inverter.
Yeah. So it comes in. Yeah. So it's created as a direct current. Well, actually, no, I won't talk about it yet. Because I don't know much about it. But yeah, we've got a form of current that it comes that the generator provides, and then that has to be changed to be compatible with the grid. Yeah. How is it that the two of you know about those wind turbines on the central markets?
I've seen them.
You've seen them?
Yeah.
Just notice them.
Normally, I understand, it's a wind turbine in that case, or else I thought it's just a wind shaft that
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But yeah. So the more observant will spot them about the place. But the thing is, they're not particularly noisy. There's not. That's the real benefit of those helical type turbines, is that they don't provide a great deal of noise. So your traditional turbines with a windmill, the 3 blades, yeah, they produce noise, and there's a lot of there's a great visual aspect to them. They're very hard to ignore. You get one of those things that's turning around, like your eye is drawn to that. Certainly, Adelaide City Council will not want that type of thing in the city, but those helical turbines, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, well, they can only be a certain size anyway, because they have a maximum wind speed, which they
Yeah. Do you know what that is? Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. I came across that as well once. Yeah. And looking for what can be done at a site. Yeah. And that's another thing. So I think that's what I pointed this out to Sarika in doing the building rules consent stuff as to other things that can be incorporated in your plans. One of those things was called a windrose. So does everybody know the site Willy Weather? No, you do, yeah. I suggest having a look for it. Not that I promote things above others, but Willy Weather, they collate a lot of environmental data about areas. So you just put in a postcode or a suburb or location, and you get their weather prediction for the day, which is primarily what most people use for it. But they have a whole bunch of stats embedded behind that you have access to. One of those things. In fact, we do have a little bit of time, so I'll just bring that up. Bring it up now. So it's the Willy Weather site. Well, let's put the city in here. So 5,000. Adelaide. So our weather for today, and that's primarily what's going to be viewed the most here. However, we've got other information about lowest temperature 3rd of May, highest. So that's for May. But if we got here and we select wind, so currently 9.3 kilometers an hour, very calm, still day. I used to use this site a lot for building tanks to decide, okay, can we do roofing up today or not? If it's 30 kilometers an hour at a site, no, we can't. But those sort of kilometers, that's fine. So we're at 35 there. That's probably not a good day for sheeting up a roof. But you get this thing here, which is your windrose, which that's indicative of a very calm, reliable place with a great deal of variation of wind directions, probably as you'd expect from a city centre which is off the coast in a bit of a depression, surrounded by lots of trees and hills and things like our capital city is. But this windrose shows the frequency of wind and direction. So our most common wind is the west-southwest into the city, and then these different coloured bands show how much of how it's distributed in terms of strong winds. So your blue, your dark blue, that's your very particularly strong winds, and then your dark greens are sort of moderate, and then light greens low wind speed, and then your light colour very calm. So yeah, Adelaide, in the main, very calm place. There's going to be wind coming from all directions, so there's not something we don't have to really design for that. Probably a really good place for one of those helical turbines, actually, because a lot of your wind is going to be in that zone of where the wind turbo can handle that. I'll just contrast that with windrows that I'm familiar with. So that's down south. Yeah, marked difference. So Adelaide City was like this, and then you get down on the Fleurieu Peninsula, tells you, okay, you're getting stuff from the south and then from the north. It's ripping through in both directions. There's a lot of wind, and it gets right up really high to very strong winds. So designing in places like that, you've got considerations. You've got to think, okay, well, we've got to orient a building like this, so that you're providing sheltered areas in front of the building for its use. But then if you're doing a building like that, well, then you've got to incorporate significant bracing. We've got, I can't remember the Australian standard number, but there's an Australian standard number that relates to the calculation of wind speed. So we determine our wind speed. Yes, you get a wind speed through that calculation and determination of that, but beyond that, just for practicality's sake, if you see a windrows like this and you're building across like that, you're going to have to provide significant bracing above the bare minimum that's required or asked for. So that can give you some insight. And then, yeah, possibly not really the place for a helical turbine, because the bulk of your wind is actually quite fast. Yeah. So got our on-site energy generation systems. Buildings should provide adequate thermal comfort for occupants and minimise the need for energy use for heating, cooling and lighting by providing an internal day living area with a north-facing window other than for minor additions. So once again, written sort of from a residential perspective, but these are council-wide objectives. This is what they want to see for buildings in the main. Arranging and concentrating main living areas of a building to the north for solar penetration and placing buildings on east-west allotments against or close to the southern boundary to maximise northern solar access and separation to other buildings to the north. That might be a really handy thing for you in advocating for the location of the building on the site. If we've got a street frontage which is, this very clear line looking down North Terrace, these are the fronts of our buildings like that, and we want to set ours back, that's going to have the council's going to have issues with that. But if we can say, well, look, we're doing this to ensure that we have that adequate space for access of light to the north, but shading to the east and the west. Efficient layout such as zoning, cast layout to enable main living areas to be separately. So much of this is for a residential context. I'll just pick out the bits. Including thermal insulation of roof, walls, floor and ceiling by draft proofing doors, windows. Okay, well that's once again small scale. Ensuring light colours are applied to external surfaces that receive a high degree of sun exposure, but not to an extent that would cause glare which produces discomfort or danger to pedestrians, occupants of adjacent buildings and users of vehicles. So that's a bit of a guide there as to our external appearance as well. Yeah, and the rest is probably from a residential perspective. So we'll go on to page 51. Renewable energy facilities, including wind farms, should be located, sited, designed, and operated in a manner which avoids or minimises adverse impacts, maximising positive impacts on the environment. Local. So, I don't think we'd come under a wind farm, and I'm not expecting any designs or proposals from people that would be confused for a wind farm. But we do have things, renewable energy facilities, including wind farms and settled developments such as etc. Be located, sited, designed, and operated in a manner which avoids or minimises detracting from the character, landscape quality, visual significance, or amenity of the area. But yeah, certainly we can incorporate solar panels as part of landscaping. People probably have people seen that on the convention centre, around near the convention centre on the Torrens side of that? Has anybody been walked through that section there? Got big curved holes with sort of circular pieces on the top of them with solar panels on them, sort of looking like a plant. I can't think of what sort of plant, but not so much a lily, but yeah. But it's as if you've got these plants coming up and then there's solar panels on top of them. That's a possibility. So doing some sort of feature which is sculptural, architectural, that's actually has a purpose of capturing light, much like a tree.
Yeah, some of the newer street lamps have the solar panels on. They don't look nice at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I know what you're talking about. I don't necessarily agree. I like to each their own, I guess.
Well, the particular ones that I've seen they're just a giant pole, which is fine because it's above your head.
Yeah.
At night time, there's a light come down, you never can see it. But during the day, you just see this big square just sitting just on an angle above it, bolted, and it just doesn't look very like they were the earlier models.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't look very.
No, I know what you're talking about. Yes, I very much agree with that. Yes, yeah, it was like there's bolt on a solar panel. Yeah. No, I know that. No, there are some more sculptural approaches to that as well, where you've got your things that start out as a fairly slender shaft and then get wider and curve over, and includes a solar panel embedded in that. And with your solar panels, there's so much progression in that space, in that technology, insofar as being able to produce flexible shaped solar panels, so not necessarily squares, but sort of whatever shape you want. Those solar panels can be flexible and curved to a radius to be placed on anything, and you can get a decent amount of energy production through smaller spaces now with your solar panels as well. So yeah, look, if you've got the time and the inclination to do it, if you want to design some sort of tree feature or something with a whole heap of leaves and things that operate, yeah, go for it. But yeah, think about, so it's not just about solar panels on roofs. But avoids or minimises adverse impact on areas of native vegetation, conservation, environmental, geological, tourism, or built natural heritage value. So we don't want to get bulldozers in for putting solar panels down. Does not impact on safety of water or air transport and the operation of ports, airfields, designated landing strips. So we've got our maximum height of our building for aircraft. We're probably nowhere near that. Avoids or minimises nuisance or hazard to nearby property owners, occupiers, road users, and wildlife by way of shadowing, flickering, reflection, and blade glint, noise, interference, television, modification to vegetation, bird, and bat strike. That's a new one for Adelaide. Fruit bats. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I mentioned I used to live near the city, so I cycled through that bit all the time. I remember it when it was like a colony of half a dozen bats. It's like, wow, we got fruit bats here. Now you can't go out in the city without seeing like a multitude of bats drinking from the Torrens, and we've even got them up at Montacute now. They're hitting the cherries for the first time this year. So yeah.
I thought that only happened in Queensland.
Well,
because Queensland they
No,
got
there's-
lots of bats.
They're on the New South Wales coast and everything. They're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They're usually in a smaller colony, but with climate change and everything.
Yeah, and also reliable food sources. So previously, you know, with the native vegetation we had, there was nothing for them to eat here previously. And then, you know, people start planting stone fruits and things like that. There's plenty of stuff for them to eat throughout the year. Yeah, a couple of them come down and, you know, let their mates know, yeah, it's a pretty good spot. Yeah. Yeah, James, you.
Oh, so the bats when they had those heat waves recently, and they have gardens, they were just dropping out the trees.
Yeah, yeah.
It's too hot for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sad. I didn't shed any tears. I'm not an orchardist, but all of my neighbours are orchardists, and it's a problem. Like they clean up. They come and clean up. Yeah, it's like yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so something bird and bat strike, something new to Adelaide there. Stormwater management, page 53. Keep down. Development which maximises the use of stormwater. So yeah, use of stormwater. How can we use our stormwater? Development designed and located to protect stormwater from pollution sources. So yeah, use it and don't pollute it. That's pretty good guidelines there for how you move ahead with that. I don't need to read through that for you. Development designed and located to protect or enhance environmental values of receiving waters. Development designed and located to prevent erosion. Probably don't have significant slopes there. There's not a main consideration with that. But of course, you know, erosion and subsequently sedimentation and pollutants entering into receiving waters. So there are always going to be constraints or considerations in the construction phase. There's a lot of soil disturbance happening there. You get so you have to produce bunds or ways to stop that sediment getting carried into the stormwater drains. And also with all of your sites, you also have to ensure there's dust control as well during demolition. So you probably would have seen it when you've got the big rock breakers on the end of the excavator. There's somebody there, you know, with a hose squirting all the time as well. Yeah, no, just the main takeaway of these two at the top there: development which maximises the use of stormwater, development designed and located to protect stormwater from pollution sources. Landscape open space, page 62. Yeah, before I get into the landscape open space, plot ratio. We're given a site, we're given a building. Yeah, look, it probably doesn't stack up there. You know, in terms of thinking, what does Adelaide, what does the city want, and what will Adelaide City Council want in terms of that plot ratio? We're doing a building on a fairly large site. It's yeah, we're gonna have to get that through councils. But yeah, one of those impediments for us is plot ratios. So plot ratios have been established for the city living zone, Adelaide Historic Conservation Zone, and North Adelaide Historic Conservation Zone, for the purpose of ensuring intensity of development on land is consistent with the desired character. So we've got the city living zone. So we want to work out: are we in the city living zone? Are we in the Adelaide Historic Conservation Zone? And we're not in the North Adelaide Historic Conservation Zone. So if we're in either of these two, okay, we're going to have to look out for the plot ratio. So on which any development is situated should not exceed the area calculated by multiplying the area of allotment on which the development is situated by the plot ratio applicable to the allotments.
Yes,
yes.
Essentially, if that was to be destroyed and other stuff to do
may be subdivided, may not be subdivided. So there's various forms of title which you can impose. Yeah, the forms of title that would, or you could, look, I don't know what the constraints around creation of separate Torrens title are for the Adelaide City Council area. I imagine they are actually really quite small. You could create separate Torrens title by having a driveway access and having vehicular access off all of those things and creating that separate title. That's what they would have done in all the East End apart. There's bits where the East End markets used to be just off Rundle Street, in between Rundle Street and Grenfell Street. You've got, I'm trying to think of Ebenezer Place, which runs off Rundle Street, and that whole area that runs through to East Terrace there in that little block. Has anybody ever walked through there where you've got the Belgian Beer Cafe?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's actually it ended up being a beautiful development. That used to be the East End markets. So that used to be these old corrugated iron sheds with lots of fruit markets and selling knickknacks and all that sort of stuff in there. That all got demolished. The facades of some of those places have been kept there. You'll see these bits of fruit and things on them. So they would have created separate Torrens title for each of those places in there, and then they go up. That is a little bit unique. Well, not unique, but it's not the mainstay of what's done in the city. The mainstay of what's done in the city is production of community title, whereby you have a site and then you have separate community title created, so those bits can be sold off separately, but there are areas within that site which are for communal use. So you have areas which are designated as this is the area that you own and you control and you can modify, and then areas that are associated with your dwelling which are all communal. That's probably the more common form of title, which also involves subdivision. So there's subdivision for both of those. And then you've got a type of title called community strata title, which is like a hybrid of that and the old strata title. Does everybody know about strata title? Have you ever heard about that?
Yeah. I think you mentioned it to us on the first.
Yeah. So that strata title, it's not a very popular one, and it's becoming less and less popular because Strata Corp actually charge a fair bit for maintenance of buildings. So you have communal development of sites whereby the facilities in the building are maintained by this separate body called Strata Corp. You have to pay your strata fees to them annually. As a lot of these strata buildings that were built in the 50s, 60s, 70s get older and older and older, strata fees are going up and up and up.
Is there any difference different from the apartment? Just like I buy an apartment, I got I got any title of the apartment, just like a big building, not an apartment inside. Maybe I just buy the one of them.
Yep.
Do I got the title of the apartment?
Well, you do. So yeah, and so that would most likely be what's called community strata title now. So it's not just the normal strata title, but it's the community strata title. There is less involvement of Strata Corp in the management of that particular title, and your fees associated with it are less. And you have, in a sense, some shared ownership of the areas that are associated with that building. Yes, but you have separate title. That separate title, will have its own certificate of title, or if it's all ones and zeros. It's all digital. It's all just on the Lands Titles Office database that you can print out from that, and you can say, I own this geographic area in this particular height above the ground, and then it stops at this height above the ground. So you can own a portion in space. Obviously, if that building is demolished, you still own that portion in space, but it just, it's air. That's how you own those. Yeah, and that's going to be your main form of title. So with the development, if you develop this site as a residential site, that's probably how you would do it. So you wouldn't actually so much have subdivision of the land. That land would remain the one parcel. You have your own one access and egress, but then you have provision of separate services, and then you have creation of separate title within geographic areas at various different strata above the ground. And that's the way that one's most likely to be developed. And that's how you see just about everything done in the city. Yeah, because those, obviously those forms of title, you can borrow money to purchase, and that's the main thing as to why people create certain forms of title is, will a bank lend on this? Where are we at? Yeah, landscaped open space. So landscaped open space should be provided on the site of a development to at least the extent specified in the principles of development control for the relevant zone or policy area for siting, amenity and screening purposes. Where the existing amount of landscaped open space provided is less than the amount specified in the relevant zone or policy area, development should not further reduce this amount. So, yeah, we're knocking down Ayres House. We're a long way from this, but still, yeah. Where landscaped open space is not required, the provision of landscaped pedestrian spaces, plant boxes and in-ground planting is appropriate. So the general theme we can get from this is council don't want reduction of landscape space. In fact, they want us to squeeze landscaping in and greenery in wherever we can. Okay, Sarah's favourite, building setbacks. In the City Living Zone, Adelaide Historic Conservation Zone and North Adelaide Historic Conservation Zone, buildings should maintain prevailing setback established by adjoining buildings, provided the resultant character reinforces the desired character for the locality. So that's zone specific, but in that statement there's a bit of guidance for us. Provided the resultant character reinforces the desired character for the locality, and we get our inference from our adjoining buildings. And this is how we should be looking at it. So going, okay, well, we've got some articulation. It's on our areas setback are here, our areas at the front there. This is our zone in which to produce the majority of ours. If we've got very clear delineation of, okay, this is the street front, this is the frontage, this is what all the buildings are doing, this is what the council will be looking for. If we can't provide that, we have to provide a better case for the council. So, okay, why haven't we done that? What are we providing? What is this building doing? Can we produce some massing, some sort of false facade, etc. building?
I guess Ayres House is there now. That doesn't really follow, I guess, the neighbouring buildings, because that's the landscape in front of us. The other buildings are all kind of way up the road up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Ayres House was built there before any of the other ones were there, and so Ayres House is not following anything. It's just being there, and the general theme for what the city wants to create, which is that appearance of that city wall as you enter the city. That's what subsequent development has been carried out in line with. So yes, well, Ayres House is there, and look, I haven't looked at any historic photographs of that area, but they're probably all the buildings that were there probably set back, and there are probably some horse paddocks and things like that. There initially a very higgledy-piggledy sort of approach to that, but then at some point in time, Adelaide City Council said we want to create that delineation, that city wall type approach, and so everything then built since then has ignored what Ayres House is doing. So development should respect the composition and proportion of architectural elements of building facades that form an important pattern which contributes to the streetscape's distinctive character in a manner consistent with the desired character of a locality. So yeah, that's another way of saying what we've been going on about this morning. Establishing visual links with neighbouring buildings by reflecting and reinforcing the prevailing pattern of visual subdivision in building facades, where a pattern of vertical and or horizontal subdivisions is evident and desirable. For example, there may be strong horizontal lines of verandas, masonry courses, podia or openings, or there may be vertical proportions in the division of facades or windows and clearly defined ground, middle and rooftop levels. We're not really, like, if anybody's seen the model of what we're doing, we're showing that to a degree, but that's not a major driver of the design. Yes, we do have that bit of that grid pattern happening, particularly in behind our curtain wall glazing, where we've got our levels defined and then some vertical elements to it. But you will have seen that in buildings about the place. There's a building on what is it, Greenhill Road. I can't remember what that building used to be. It's a building which has all been done up right in the corner of Greenhill Road and Fullerton Road.
Yeah, I understood. Earlier it was a yellow, next to Strata office, just at the corner you're saying?
Yeah,
Which
right.
one's-
Yeah, but I think the Strata one is the one you're referring to. The next one, the big one that was, it was some form of, is maybe a hospital, or it was something like that. I can't remember what it used to be, but then that's all been turned into apartments now.
Okay, yeah.
That, I think that building is a striking example of creating that visual delineation between the apartments. This is an apartment here. This is a wall coming out from that. They've done it in different colours and bits jutting out, etc. But that's what that is getting to. I'm not.
That tall.
Yeah, it is quite tall. It's really quite tall.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the previous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, okay, it looks like hotel.
Yeah, well, it does. Yeah, it's a
Or
bit like
maybe
a
some service
yeah.
apartment.
Yeah.
Maybe an apartment.
Yeah,
Service apartments,
they're separate residential apartments, but it does certainly have that hotel like.
So it was a hospital.
It was something like that. Yeah, I can't remember what it used to be. It might have been a building owned by utilities, some sort of office building. Yeah, it's way back before my time, like before I moved to Adelaide. Yeah, so it's been apartments since I've been in Adelaide. Yeah, but you know, we can create some of that in our design if we so wish. I can't think of the word for it. Starts with an F, but wherever you have curtain wall glazing and where you've got your floor that butts up to that spandrel panel. So it doesn't start with F, it starts with spandrel panel. Have you heard the term spandrel panel before? So you've got the curtain wall glazing, you've got various different approaches. One is to have your floors set back a little bit from your curtain wall glazing, and then you have this consistent curtain wall glazing down the front. Everybody here knows what I mean when I say curtain wall glazing. Cool. So that sort of approach, that's what you've got on the SA Water building, Victoria Square there. This lovely big glass facade that's uninterrupted. With your early curtain wall glazing, but you still see it done today, is where you have glazing sort of in between your floors. So you've got your floors that come right to the outer surface, and then your glazing imposed on that is the K-lock system, where you've got these large aluminium bits that you put your glass in and lift them in and lock them in place. So very easy to install. But then of course you don't want to have glass slab unless you're dressing up your slab somehow. The way that slab is dressed up is what's called a spandrel panel. So it looks like the glazing, but it's it's a different colour, it's non-transparent, so it keeps that same pressure. So that's one way of doing that if you wanted to incorporate that in your models. I'm going to go straight to 74. 74. So, transport and access. So, access to and movement within the city that is easy, safe, comfortable and convenient with priority given to pedestrians and cyclists' safety and access. So, yeah, we'll have a lot of pedestrians there, we'll have probably a lot of bicycles there. So we need things to be clear, open, so we can see cyclists coming along. Development should provide safe, convenient and comfortable access and movement, of course. Vehicle access points along primary, secondary city access roads, that's us, and local connector roads, as shown on map Adelaide 1 overlay. So you can go to that, I won't go to that. Now, yes, we are an access road to the city. Pedestrian access, development that promotes the comfort, enjoyment and security of pedestrians by providing shelter and reducing conflict with motor vehicles. So our only conflict with motor vehicles is going to be our entry and exit to the site. We have to access that across the path. Probably what we don't want to do is have our access and egress right next to Vaughan Place. So where people are getting off the tram, crossing the street and walking through to Rundle, we don't want to have that access there. Let's move it back a bit. Development that contributes to the quality of public realm and safe, secure and attractive environment for pedestrian movement and social interaction. So possibly we may include some pedestrian routes across our site as well, if that works well with us. Safe and convenient design of access to buildings and public spaces, particularly for people with disabilities. That's something, so it's mentioned here, that's something you have to do, it's in your procedure document anyhow. So once again, we're not designing specifically for disabled access in this case, but with any form of development that is of public-private nature, you do have to have consideration of people with disabilities. Development should reflect the significance of the paths and increase the permeability of the pedestrian network identified within Adelaide map overlay number 2 by ensuring pedestrians are not disrupted or inconvenienced by badly designed or located vehicle access ramps and footpaths and streets, and vehicle and service entry points are kept to a minimum to avoid adverse impact on pedestrian amenity. So we've got to balance that pedestrian amenity with the safety of the vehicles coming in and out, and that access of North Terrace. Yeah, I won't go through any of those. They're a bit more specific to various features that we don't have ourselves. So, going to this, access for people with disabilities should be provided to and within all buildings to which members of the public have access in accordance with the relevant Australian standards. Such access should be provided through the principal entrance, subject to heritage considerations and for exemptions under the relevant legislation. I think previously I've mentioned this. Should be provided through the principal entrance. Have I mentioned that before?
The main entrance.
Yeah.
I think you talked about it.
Yeah. So, that is an interesting one for us. So that comes, well, it's mentioned in the NCC. I'm not sure if it's also mentioned in AS 1428. I think it is. Anyhow, it's something that keeps popping up all the time. I don't know which library it was. It was maybe it was St. Peter's Library, where their front door was. They couldn't actually squeeze an access ramp in there. So what they did is they moved their lending and checkout section within the building to be close to this other entrance where they could get an access ramp there, thereby meeting this. So it's not always about, okay, this is our building, this is what we're doing here. Do we have to get ramps and provide our principal entrance? Sometimes you move the principal entrance. The main take-home message is that we have principal entrance. And so decide for your building what is your principal entrance. And you might have principal entrance for different uses in this building. We've got our retail section below that has a very clearly defined principal entrance for that use. but our office area above, we're not necessarily or probably not going to enter our office area via the showroom. We're going to have separate accesses. Therefore, should we be providing? I think I'm leading you very much, but yeah, but think about your car parking. Think about how you're accessing the building for your various different uses.
But then we're assuming that someone that's disabled can get to the second floor.
Certainly. Yeah, they can take a lift. Yeah. They can't do that in the event of a fire.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. Anything with multiple story. When it comes to like disabled in a wheelchair, it's sort of like, well, they just shouldn't go up there to start.
Yeah.
If an emergency happens,
yeah.
there's a problem.
Yes.
But
Yeah. There is. Yeah. And well, there's a problem in terms of built form. In the TAFE here, if we have somebody who's in a wheelchair or somebody who's temporarily disabled on crutches for a bit, and we get the alarm going off, yes, they're not allowed to use the lifts to begin with. They have to use the stairs. We as students are not supposed to assist them for various other liability reasons. That might happen also. But we have dedicated staff here, the security staff, whose job it is to ensure that they're all taken to safety.
Well, not really, because the security aren't supposed to do it either.
Really?
That's their legal obligation. You're not supposed because I've done a security guard course.
Yeah.
So as being a security guard, you have to ask them first.
Yeah.
If they would like to help. If they refuse, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you can't put your hands on anyone unless it is like a deflection or of a threatening attack.
Yeah.
You can't do anything unless you see it physically. So say you're a security guard at a store and someone's just robbed it.
Yeah.
If you haven't physically seen that person rob the store and you've been told by someone else, if they've told you, they've then taken their eyes off of that person, the whole thing's gone.
Yeah.
Someone has to have their has to be physically watching that particular person the entire time, not have any loss in sight of that person whatsoever, and notify you at the same time without losing sight for you to be able to do anything. Otherwise, you just have to stand there.
Yeah,
And
right.
let them go past.
I just sort of.
No,
Yeah.
you can't even block them. That's part of the problem.
Yeah, right. Wow. Wow. That's, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're not even allowed to do that because that is then an accusation, and if they don't have that item on you, they can countersue.
So it's really only if you can just see what they've done, you've seen the whole time, you do something. Otherwise,
Yep.
you just
Otherwise,
run up there.
you can't do anything. If they're being rowdy, you can sort of then if someone's been like in a crowd or something, and someone's being exceptionally rowdy, you can sort of gesture to sort of get them to come along, but you can never touch them unless they've done a violent act to harm others or anything like that.
Yeah. Possibly the emergency situation here in the TAFE is if the security would come up to somebody, say, hey, do you want help away from that fire that's happening here? They'd probably say yes. And it's probably,
If they say yes, it's fine.
Well,
it's
fine,
not a
yeah.
problem. But if they say no, can't do a thing.
Yeah.
So what about the
Maybe
firemen? They
they're
can
saying
do
that's
what
different
do with the
regulations.
what?
He didn't end.
The
The firemen.
the firemen's in a different boat. Like they have to. If the person is conscious, they have to ask permission.
Also
They
need to ask
should.
them.
They should
Yeah.
ask permission.
Yeah.
If the building's burning down and they're hysterical, if they're not in control of themselves, that's when they can take over and go, yeah, they can do it.
Yeah.
But if the person looks in control of themselves and you ask them and they say no, you can't do a thing. Even firemen, police,
No.
everything like that. They can't do a thing if the person's in control.
Yeah. So probably that person will be making their way out of the building.
Yeah.
But then,
Anyway,
Yeah.
they'd be walking out and it'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's
Want
yeah.
to commit the
But I
suicide.
think
And also the family need to ask them. I just.
but in a nutshell, I think
Go
we're
back.
yeah. I think sorry to cut you off there,
Okay, so
but
I I just choose somebody want to commit the suicide, and and the fireman or the police try to rescue him, and then say no, don't touch me.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, from that point, the fireman
The
would,
difference.
yeah, it would be put onto someone else to come in and diffuse that situation.
And I think sometimes you cross that line of where you go, okay, we act now, ask for forgiveness later.
Yeah.
The thing is, instead of fire agent, because like, if you didn't help them, they're just going to burn to death right there. You think, well, you might just get it.
I mean, a lot of situations can be rationalised, but if that person can then has the opportunity to counter, and that ruins people completely.
Yeah.
Loss of job, loss of everything.
If you are not able to save that person, in that case, if you save that person, then I think.
No. People have been saved, and they've said they don't want help, and then they've countersued the person who saved them. That's how bad. That's how bad it is.
I'd rather die than have your help.
Right, I better keep it on track because I'm running the recording here for the external students as well. So yeah, so it's not just our time. But yes, there is that interaction of what can we design for, what can we not design for, etc. Yeah, we lead our job finishes before it goes to security and things like that. So it's like, what can we design for? Well, the NCC tells us that, the Australian standards tell us that, to a lesser extent, Adelaide City Council tell us that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've got onto it through looking at that. So, subject to heritage considerations and for exemptions under relevant legislation. Well, we're knocking down Ayers House. We won't have any heritage considerations anymore. But yeah, so you're aware of the Australian standards that relate to disabled access. 1428 plus 2890 for your car parking. Oh, bicycle access. So greater use of bicycles for travel to and within the city and improvement of conditions, safety and facilities for cyclists. Well, yeah, we have to put in car parks, but can we put in some of this stuff to sweeten the deal for the council? Say, look, we're looking to the future, we're providing for the future. Adequate supply of secure short stay and long stay bicycle parking to support desired growth in city activities. Development should have regard to bicycle routes identified within Adelaide 1, Adelaide 3, limiting vehicular access points. I haven't looked at that map overlay. We won't digress too much. We're taking a little bit of time, but beyond that, I identified the Torrens as that bicycle freeway. There's also that those bicycle paths. Is it further up Frome Road? I think it is. Yeah, so further up Frome Road, from there there's actually dedicated bicycle path, and then that Frome Road that goes not too far from our property and then heads down towards the Torrens. So that's definitely once again a significant bicycle route. So limiting vehicular access, ensuring that vehicles can enter and leave the site in a forward direction, thereby avoiding reverse manoeuvres. Yeah, definitely. We've got to provide turnaround spaces. Our vehicles have to enter forwards and exit forwards. With no way we're doing any driveways that will require reversing onto North Terrace. An adequate supply of on-site secure bicycle parking should be provided to meet the demand generated by the development within the site of the development. Bicycle parking should be provided in accordance with the requirements set out in table Adelaide 6. On-site secure bicycle parking facilities for residents and employees. The long stay should be located in a prominent place, located at the ground floor level, located under cover, located where passive surveillance is possible or covered by CCTV, well lit and well signed, close to well-used entrances, accessible by cycling along a safe, well-lit route. Take the form of a secure cage with locking rails inside or individual bicycle lockers, and in the case of cage, have an access key pass common to the building access key pass. On-site secure bicycle parking facilities for short stay users should be directly associated with main entrance, located at ground floor level, located under cover, well lit and well signed, located where passive surveillance is possible and covered by CCTV, and accessible by cycling along a safe, well lit route.
Yeah, so as that, as well as with the disabled, we're picking a main entrance. So,
yep.
So we've picked our main entrance, but then we've also got the back entrance and the entrance for the upper floor. So each
Yep.
floor would essentially have its own main entrance, although you could assign the top 2 floors to the same one.
Yes.
So-
yeah, you can. Yep.
So say I made the front door, the main front door, the front entrance for the showroom, the bottom floor, and then I made a back door inside, the front entrance for the top 2 floors.
Mm-hmm.
Would I then have to put disabled parking and bike railings both out the front and out the back?
Well, yeah. The answer to that is yes. Yeah, and that's the thing. I was sort of leaving that to you guys to go. But yeah, sure. Let's have that discussion. Let's say you have to do 4 disabled car parks. I'm just pulling a figure out of the air. That's not the figure, or it may not be the figure. Let's say we had to do 4. We have that front entrance, which is the showroom for that lower level, and then we've got the offices at the rear. How does anybody have any ideas of how I would distribute those car parks, those disabled car parks?
Like base the amount of people that are supposed to enter and exit those levels.
Yeah. So I go, without analysing it thoroughly, I'd probably go 1 disabled car park close to that front entrance there, 3 disabled car parks at the rear. That's, yeah. You could split it 50-50 as well. You could go, okay, more the front, half the amount back, but there is that thing of the number of people which are going to be accessing that. Yeah, and so the same with the bicycle parking as well. That's the thing. When you've got multiples of the thing, you can split them up, and you can choose. Okay, well this is principal entrance, and so essentially we're doing that. But for this particular use, for these things, that's the principal interest. Let's get the parking associated for that use there, parking associated with this use here. Well, okay. So what design technique, possibly something in that for us in relation to Principle 237A. Avoid unnecessary vehicular crossing points, particularly with potential reversing movements from motor vehicles, and utilise the shortest, most direct route for cycles to reach the destination bicycle parking. So we don't want bicycles having crossing cars coming in, things like that. That should be fairly easy to provide. Another thing is been interesting in regards to bicycles. So you used to have a lot of bicycles in the city with all the couriers. So email sort of reduced those numbers, but you still have bicycle couriers couriering stuff around. You still get deliveries, and and where we've lost bicycle couriers, we've gained Deliveroos and whatever. So there's various food deliveries and things happening on bicycles as well. So think about not only your bicycle parking for people who might be using the showroom, but bicycle parking for deliveries as well, because this is still happening to quite an extent. To facilitate and encourage the use of bicycles and walking as a means of travel to and from the place of work, commercial and institutional development should provide on-site shower and changing facilities. So possibly we can incorporate that within our toilets. Got a toilet area here. We could have some bicycle parking. Bring all those things together. Public transport development that promotes the use of sustainable transport consistent with state government objectives and initiatives. So have some connection with that tram stop at the front. We've also got a bus stop. We've got a whole host of bus stops all along North Terrace there, but we do have bus stops close to the site there as well, in front of the IGA next door. Accessible public transport for all metropolitan residents and visitors, and safe and attractive facilities for public transport users. Important points from here. So development along high concentration public transport routes identified in that map overlay should ensure there are pedestrian links through the site if needed to provide access to public transport we've got that link right next to us. We don't actually have to provide anything across our site. We're not providing shelter. Provide interest and activity at street level. Yes, we're part of that. Where possible, avoid vehicle access across high concentration public transport routes. So, yeah, as I mentioned before, don't put your access ingress right next to one place. I think I've went past it. Oh no, still yet to come. Page 78. So yeah, work your way through this vehicle access. By the way, I'm not going to labour on all these things, but there are bits in there for you. So you know, no minimum setback required for rear access way where the access way is wider than 6.5 metres, etc. So work your way through looking for any of the pertinent aspects of that. Go straight onto car parking to meet community expectation for parking supply while supporting a shift towards active and sustainable transport modes. An adequate supply of short-stay, long-stay parking to support desired growth in city activities without detrimental effect on traffic and pedestrian flows. Yeah, once again, you'll have to work through the car parking requirements. I won't work through that today. What I will say though is that you've got a table that says this is how many car parks you need for these square metres, and then we've got reference to some standards we know well. Australian Standard 2890.1 parking facilities off-street car parking. So you've got some numerical constraints around provision of car parking there, and then various different, conceptual constraints to minimise adverse impact on adjoining residential properties, minimise loss of existing on-street parking spaces, blah 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 blah. Work your way through all those desires, and go straight on to number 90. So we've got both regulated trees and significant trees. So regulated trees, the conservation of regulated trees that provide important aesthetic and environmental benefit. Development in balance with preserving regulated trees that demonstrate one or more of the following attributes significantly contributes to the character or visual amenity of the local area. So with our existing vegetation, you have to ask yourself, does it do that? Indigenous to the local area, so there are some eucalypts on the site there. They've been identified as, well actually no, I won't go through all that. Look at the arborist report, see what you can do. A rare or endangered species, an important habitat for native fauna. Native fauna in the city, do we have native fauna in the city?
Yes.
Yeah.
You've got native fauna everywhere, doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've got native, like for anybody who's been at the Garden of Unearthly Delights at 3 o'clock in the morning. Also, you would have seen the possums around. You have throngs of people, and the possums come out to have a bit of a snack. Yeah, also mentioned the bats. There's plenty of native fauna that exists within the city. Yeah, I guess some of it. I guess you have to look after all of it. Some of it you might want to promote. Some of it you might want to control in terms of its interaction with the built environment. Development should have minimum adverse effects on regulated trees. A regulated tree should not be removed or damaged other than where it can be demonstrated that one or more of the following apply. The tree is diseased and its life expectancy is short. The tree represents a material risk to public or private safety. Those two might be the same. The tree is causing damage to a building. Development that is reasonable and expected would not otherwise be possible. Gee, I wouldn't want to be a tree and reading this. the work is required for the removal of dead wood, treatment of disease, or is the general interest of the health of the tree. So yeah, so things are sort of stacked more in the developer's favour here than in the trees. In the trees' favour. So there are plenty of opportunities for you to argue that any one of these is the case. Tree damaging activity other than removal should seek to maintain the aesthetic appearance and structural integrity of the tree. So there is an Australian standard that relates to protection of trees. Does anybody know what number that is? No, I can't remember it either off the top of my head.
It's been mentioned, I think, in awareness report.
Yes, yeah. It starts with a 4, but I can't remember what. Anyhow, that's the way that Australian standard is written is primarily focused on during construction, during development, the tree protection zone, so you're not crushing around a tree, you're not adding soil, removing soil, all these sorts of things. You have a protection area around a tree. And then the other major bits in that, it's about structural root zone. So if we're digging holes, cutting footings or whatever, that we're not, because trees are a structure, they cop a lot of wind, they're very tall. That structure is supported by roots underneath the ground. If we go chopping off through one side, the tree's going to topple over. Particularly, Adelaide City, not particularly windy. Second Valley, we chop through the northern side of a structural root zone for a tree. Next big storm, it's going to come down. Significant. So that's our regulated trees, and then we've got significant trees. I probably want to be a significant tree rather than a regulated tree. The conservation of significant trees will provide important aesthetic and environmental benefits to metropolitan Adelaide. Principles of development control. Development should be designed and sited to retain any existing tree of substantial size and merit and existing street trees, and accommodating and protecting their normal growth pattern. So, if you're a regulated tree, there's things people can do. If you're a significant tree, you're a little bit safer. Where a significant tree or group of trees makes an important contribution to the character or amenity of the local area, or is indigenous to the local area and its species is listed under the National Parks and Wildlife Act as a rare or endangered native species, or represents an important habitat of native fauna, or is a part of wildlife corridor of remnant area of native vegetation, etc., etc. Development should preserve these attributes. Probably everybody's aware of the famous example of the Burnside Shopping Centre. The tree, you know that one? No.
They just plant a big tree there, move from somewhere else, and the tree there.
Oh no, the tree was there. The tree was there. Yeah. So Burnside, you know the area. Yeah, it's sort of characterised by large red gums. You've got these big red gums that are remnants of the vegetation that were there. So prior to putting in roads and houses and things like that, you had bushland there with big red gum trees spotted about the place, and probably a few stringy barks and things like that, and manna gums and whatever in between. Those smaller species would have all been taken out, but then the big red gums have been retained throughout that whole area. Burnside Shopping Centre was one of those areas with red gums spotted about the place. Same as the council chambers, sort of directly across the road, you've got big red gums there as well. They wanted to extend the Burnside Shopping Centre, so make a big extension on it. There's a massive big red gum in the way.
Yes.
They weren't allowed to remove it, so the architects designed a really big cover over it that links those two things together and basically brings that big tree inside the building. So that's the way they got the development through there, because otherwise what are you going to do? Just build a separate building and have a walkway? Possibly. They probably entertained those ideas. Anyhow, has everybody been to Burnside Shopping Centre in recent years?
Yes.
Well, the poor tree didn't survive that. Well, it survived the construction phase. It didn't survive. Didn't survive within a year after being enclosed. I guess because you have a controlled environment where humidity is you know, at the same humidity all the time, that the temperature is the same, that you don't have bugs and you don't spiders and lizards and whatever living under the bark. You don't have all that, and then instead of access to moisture that comes down through the ground, it's perfectly paved. So yeah, so that's why Burnside Shopping Centre is shaped the way that it's shaped, is for meeting this stuff. That's yeah.
They have got their design, just got shown in the shopping center last year, because the whole shopping center want to be upgraded.
Yeah.
So they put their design in the shopping center, inside the center.
Oh yeah.
And everyone can go around there and see what will this shopping center look like.
Oh, so it's going to be upgraded once again, is it?
Yes, will be upgraded once again, yeah. They put a lot of money to upgrade, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so maybe in couple of years, in
Okay.
2 years or 3 years, they will upgrade it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. So they've been going through a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to. Okay, if we've got significant trees, that is a. I don't hate to use the word impediment in terms of tree. I mean, there's like historic conservation, there are very good reasons for keeping things. You can't. It takes 200 years or so to produce one of those glorious red gums. You can't just do that, and not within our lifetime. So anyhow, development should be undertaken with the minimum adverse effect on the health of a significant tree. Well, I think Burnside Shopping Centre would have had all their paperwork in place to say that that's what was happening. Significant trees should be preserved, and tree damaging activity should not be undertaken unless, in the case of tree removal, the tree is diseased and its life expectancy is short. A tree represents an unacceptable risk to public or private safety, or the tree is shown to be cause substantial damage to a substantial building structure of value, or the tree is known to cause health problems, and all other reasonable remedial treatments and measures have been determined to be ineffective. So if we're a significant tree, we've got that. If we're a regulated tree, we don't.
It also says at one place that it can be removed, but we need to replace it within 3 months.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
For the significant trees.
Okay. Yeah. That's further down, is it?
Some very high.
Okay, where a significant tree is proposed for removal, such tree should be replaced in the same site within 3 months of development approval, subject to review. Yep.
Does it fit for all the trees? Because my neighbor just cut the big tree in his front yard. I'm sure that's not significant tree, but he just replaced a small one. Replaced with that big tree with a smaller one.
Maybe it was a significant tree. Maybe that particular tree that they had removed was causing, did have safety issues. Yeah, or so. Yeah, and I think it's certainly with things. What sort of tree was it? Do you know?
It's look like a little bit like a palm tree. It's the evergreen tree.
Right.
Yeah, and the leaf is like a middle, not kind of middle, just like a little bit sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't flower. It doesn't.
Yeah. So it's a single trunk, and branches
trunk,
coming out from
And very elegant.
It's going to be a Norfolk pine.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's a kind of pine tree. Yeah. And that kind of tree looks very old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like normally people like to plant in.
Yeah.
Very old-fashioned tree.
Yeah.
I mean, fashion is really dictated on the amount of money and popularity in what's on the market at the time. The trees. What we can import from where and when we put it.
Because that kind of tree, I look around in our neighborhood, only some very old-fashioned style house, they got that kind of tree.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that kind of tree are very big, very large.
Really large.
And few people can plant this tree. It's very small. So maybe 30 or 20 years ago, people like to plant that kind of tree. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, but it's not sounding like an indigenous species, so it's probably not a significant tree, or it may be significant because of its girth also. But so yeah, possibly they had to replace that from removing that tree.
Because in his front yard, he's just chopped it down and replaced that big tree with a small one. Another tree, maple. He's replaced that tree with a maple tree, a small
A
maple.
maple, yeah.
A maple.
Yeah.
So maple tree.
Yeah, but with your trees like the red gums, because all throughout those eastern suburbs you do have these remnant big red gums. Yes, councils, they do cause damage to buildings. You see it. You see their roots lifting up things,
Yes, that's
etc. But also just recently, I didn't get to see it. My wife saw it. A branch from one of those big red gums fell on a truck and collapsed the suspension, squashed. Did you hear about that? Or
No, I just know from I've seen other trees drop branches, and just the sound. If you're around when it makes that sound,
Yeah. You're just lucky well, the driver walked away from the truck. The cab didn't get squashed, but so, a metre difference, yeah, he's driving
that
along.
To my friend's car. That
Right.
happens to my friend's car because there's lots of gum tree in Bensai area. So this is very big, and the branch just dropped, hit his car, hit the roof of her car,
Yeah.
and the other people just told her, if your car get damaged, you can get the money from the
Insurance. Oh, from the council.
Just call the council.
Yeah.
And the tree damaged my car, you should pay me.
Yeah, are they joking or? Well,
I'm not sure. Is that right or not?
I don't know.
I'd say it's something that would come out of your insurance rather than your
Rather than council.
Yeah, but so there are definitely avenues to argue for the removal of even trees like that. But yeah, be prepared. You will have a fight on your hands. I'm definitely not an advocate for removing trees. Like, trees, they take a long time to grow. They do provide a great deal of amenity. Urban heat island effect is a massive problem, particularly in a very dry, hot place like South Australia. So the more retention of trees we can have, the better. But yeah, it's trees, buildings, they can't exist on the same spot, exact same spot. I'm saying they can coexist, but they take up physical area. Anyhow, so in any other case, the work is required to remove tree dead wood, treatment of disease, or is in the general interest and health of the tree. I won't go through all of those. Because that's all sort of case specific. And this relates to the protection of trees during development. But Sarah, that one you mentioned about if you have to remove a significant tree, then you have to replace that with a tree within 3 months. But let's look at that closely. That is, so where a significant tree is proposed for removal, such tree should be replaced on the same site within 3 months of development approval, subject to the season by which a mature tree or appropriate species sufficient size, fully grown, etc. Landscaping of equivalent landscape value in accordance with a comprehensive landscaping plan for the site and the desired character for the locality.
It's a bit rough because they want you to you find a remover, but you need to place it on the same site within 3 months, and it has to be a mature tree of appropriate species.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, that is huge. Now, I would also very much want to get the definition of, or how is that interpreted on the same site? Does that mean if I take a tree from here, do I have to put a tree here? Or, if this is the same property, can I put it over there?
I'd say it's the same property. Because
Same
you wouldn't
property,
remove a
yeah.
tree unless you wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, but you might remove a tree if it's dangerous to occupants,
Yeah.
or you know presents a. But look, if you're bringing in a mature tree, and we're talking eucalypts or something like that, they don't handle transportation. The structure of their root system, they're not like palm trees which can be cut off and put in places. So anything you replace it by is probably going to be really dangerous as well, because it's not going to be particularly healthy. Yeah, I think this is about, okay, if we're removing these trees, yes, we've got to put these trees back in at some spot on the site, probably but think of a better location.
It's a bit weird how they don't have a referral thing to the second part A as well. Landscaping of equivalent landscape value in accordance with comprehensive landscaping plan. It seems a bit weird how they don't have a way to defer you to where, maybe to be in the significant trees Australian standard.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, well, say we had a 200-year-old tree.
Yep.
And we wanted to remove that, and that says we're allowed to put landscaping of equivalent landscaping value. So where would we find what is an equivalent
value.
landscaping value of a 200-year-old tree?
Yeah. I think it's actually not saying that, though. I think what we have is, so such trees should be replaced on the same site within 3 months of development approval, right?
Yeah.
Like for like, then subject to the season by. So it's saying, like, what they're saying is, we don't expect you to go putting in one of these trees in December and then trying to get that through December, January, February.
Yeah.
So this is relating to the season by A, B. So subject to the season by landscaping of equivalent landscape value in accordance with comprehensive landscaping plan for the site and desired character for the locality. So it's, that relates to the season, not by actually replacement of that tree by landscaping of similar amenity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's our reference there. But yeah, very very difficult. Like trees, landscaping throw up a lot of hurdles in terms of it's all just incredibly subjective. We can't make this objective assessment of, well, people do. People say there are tree valuers. There are people who determine the value of a tree, because of course there are disputes around that. Somebody comes in and cuts down a tree. Other people say, hey, you've reduced the value of my property by the removal of the tree. The value of that tree is X. There are people that determine that, but it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. What is the value? What is the financial value of a tree? What is the social value of a tree? What is So it's always going to be in that realm of subjectivity. But that's the space in which you can negotiate with council, which you can say, we're doing this, etc. We're providing these. Development involving groundwork activities such as excavation, filling and sealing of surrounding surfaces, whether such work takes place in sites, significant tree or otherwise, should only be undertaken where the aesthetic appearance, health and integrity of a significant tree, including its root system, will not be adversely affected. So we have to think about that. Where development is to take place in close proximity to a significant tree, that tree should be protected by appropriate measures during the course of the development. In particular, the area in which the tree's branches and roots are located should be protected by the erection of a secure fence. This you'll find in your Australian standard that relates to protection of trees during construction. I think that's it, and I think we'll leave it at that for all of our considerations